Hello everyone, my name is Erik Owens. I am the president of the American Distilling Institute. I am here today with...
Grover.
Come on, Grover, what do you do? Why are you here?
I'm here because they asked me to be here.
Come
I
on.
can provide some kind of answer that makes sense for any question. But
What do you do for a business? Why are you here? You do the agave, tequila, Matchmaker.
Agave Matchmaker app and website, and I am the person with the largest target on their back in the tequila industry.
And you sell agave syrup, right?
Yes, we have a syrup. Rispetto is called it, is what we're calling it. It's agave syrup. That's just cooked agave. It's a very different process than the industrial stuff. But it's very simple. It's just pure cooked agave in a bottle. We don't filter it. It's just pure expression of the plant. Very different take on agave syrup than everything that you can see in the store.
Is it Jalisco or is it?
Yeah, it's from.
California?
Yeah, it's from Jalisco. Yeah.
And we have Henry, Ventura Spirits.
I'm Henry, Ventura Spirits.
Been distilling for how many years?
We've been in business since 2014. We sold our first bottles. And so, yeah, we have a whole line of different types of spirits made from all kinds of different California agricultural inputs. We work with a lot of different fruits like strawberries and blueberries, a lot of citrus, and make ready-to-drink cocktails, gin, amaro, etc., along with agave spirits.
Yeah.
You heard my partner Andrew speak this morning. And we also do a good bit of contract production, private label, for other brands.
And you do that wonderful RTD that's available in Trader Joe's. Is it called the Angelino, or is that?
Yes, the Angelino Spritz.
Yeah, I love that.
Hi, my name's Brandon. I am part owner of Revival Stillworks. We're located just above Seattle in Canada. And we design and build distilleries all across the United States and Canada. I've been building distilleries for about 15 years and probably about 40 to 50 distilleries in total that I've worked on. So yeah, that's my wrap.
If you want distilling equipment that's actually made in North America, Revival there's Vendome, there's Revival, it's not a long list. And some of the equipment we'll be talking about today is made by you, but you also know how to source some of the more specialized equipment for agave. And really we're going over production from plant to bottle. So raw material, fermentation, distillation, packaging. And so when we're talking about the cost of spirits, there's one of the first sort of factors we sort of broke it down into three levels. First level is the brand. Like if you just want to start a brand, have somebody else completely make that for you. They have a distillery and you just show up, you give them money, and then they produce a final spirit for you. So that would be the first level. The next level would be a non-distilling producer. That is someone who, in whiskey world, you would just buy barrels, bring it into your warehouse, blend it, put it into a bottle. That would be the next level, non-distilling producer. And then the third level we'll talk about is starting an actual distillery, where you are going from raw plant all the way to a sold product. And so in those three levels, brand, non-distilling producer, we're talking about, initial levels of investment. I was talking to a distiller or a brand recently, or he's a distiller now, but sort of, to start a brand really is about a $200,000 investment. And that's to buy, set up your intellectual property, to buy products so that other people can make them, and that sort of thing, right? Then that non-distilling producer level is, I've talked to people who've started like a gin distillery, or that, they're just buying barrels and blending, and really it's probably around a $750,000 level. And then there's a full distillery, like to start a full distillery, with the tasting room and all of that stuff is probably in the $3 to $5 million range. And so, you know, another big factor in the cost of what it might cost to produce your spirits is really volume. And there's different levels of sort of industry lingo. There's a nano, which is about 10,000 proof gallons, or just think of it about 10,000 gallons. So if you're making 10,000 gallons or less, that's sort of one scale. 100,000 gallons or less would be another scale, and then commercial would be above $100,000. So those numbers are all, you know, do you want to create a nationally distributed brand that's in every Total Wine in America is obviously going to be much more expensive than starting a small craft distiller here in Santa Barbara that's really focusing on your local market. Some of the sort of so non-distilling producer, you own the IP, you're in charge of sales and marketing, you have a co-packer. So some of the benefits of non-distilling producer is you know, running distillery equipment is very expensive. It's expensive to own, it's expensive to operate, and you're paying for it when it is not moving. The distiller, you know, you as a distiller, you control all aspects of it, but it's extremely, as I was saying, it's extremely capital intensive. You know, there's permitting. I'm sure many people, well, I guess not many people here have tried to start distilleries, but you know, there's permitting issues. It depends on where you are. It depends on how many distilleries have come before you, and it depends on is the county familiar with these things? Is the fire marshal familiar with these things? All of that stuff can cause additional problems or additional costs for you. You know, another issue for you, the lack of contract producers. I mean, this is such a burgeoning industry that really there's maybe 5 distilleries in the entire state that can actually manufacture things for you. Joshua Tree, Shelter, Ventura, Venus, and then O'Neill was talking about coming online, but I'm not even sure they're up and running. Really, we're talking, there's, you know, what are the raw materials you're looking at? Agave syrups, agave piñas, and bulk agave spirits.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that you have access to plants that you're growing them or you can buy them, it's so early that, to Eric's point, there's not an established contract production or any kind of production industry yet, but it's very dynamic, and I would say, you know, you could call around to people like us and talk about what your goals are and what you want to do, and that's certainly the lowest friction way to dip your toe into the market, or you know, into becoming a brand owner, would be to partner with somebody else to do it.
So, Brandon, would you like to go into budgetary equipment costs?
Sure, yeah. So I'm here for the 1 or 2 of you that put up your hand and said you were crazy enough to build a distillery. that's what.
The alternative is letting your product rot in the field.
That could be, and so that's another aspect that people need to consider, right? If there are no larger processing facilities coming online, then what are you going to do with your product? So there are ways to build distilleries that are more economical than others. If you have a small farm, don't just disregard the fact that, oh, I can't have my own distillery. You can, but there are a lot of regulatory hurdles that you have to jump through, permitting and equipment costs and labor costs. And that's something that, you know, if you're considering doing that, come tap me on the shoulder after this. But what we're going to be talking about here is basically what does it cost to build a distillery on a farm in the 1 ton to 5 ton processing capacity range. And when I talk tons, unfortunately, I'm speaking metric tons, and I'm going to be speaking about liters as well. That's what we use in Mexico, and that's what we use in Canada. So think about metric tons as opposed to imperial tons. So what does that mean? It means that you're equivalent to harvesting approximately 1 to 5 acres per year, and doing about 1 roast per week. So that makes sense for a lot of small distilleries. They're just doing 1 roast per week. They have 1 autoclave. Yes?
How many liters per week?
How many liters per week? So in the total year, you're going to produce about 6,000 liters, 6,187 liters, if you assume 8 kilograms per liter.
Okay, and so the cost that you're describing would be associated with building a distillery that produces 6,000 liters per year?
That's right. So on the very smallest scale, if you're looking at about a 1-ton roast,
Okay.
doing that about 28 times per year. So 28 weeks out of the year, you're going to roast once every week. That's about how much you're going to produce. Not much.
No.
Very little.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about your business plan and thinking, okay, well, I'm going to harvest, 1 acre or up to 5 acres, you're looking at the micro distillery size. A lot of counties will actually have an exception in the rules to allow a micro distillery on agricultural land, and that will help with getting you through the permitting process a little bit more. You won't have to pay as much to get through the permitting process. But what does it mean? In reality, you're looking at a small distillery. It's still going to be a distillery. It's going to be on farmland. You're going to have to go through the permitting process. There's regulations that restrict how you can build a distillery, especially in California. You're going to be looking in the 1 million to 3 million for the very small range, 3 million to 5 million for somewhere around like the 5 acre per year range. And it's just the reality of building a distillery in California. And so a lot of distilleries, they're going to need to look at that cost. And if you're small, can I afford it? Or should I be looking at, having my product produced somewhere else, like maybe one of the larger processing facilities that may be coming up online. But that's kind of the reality of what small farmers are looking at. And that's why we need more production facilities in California.
I think there's something wrong with the map.
We have.
You cannot spend $3 million to make.
That's right.
60,000 watts.
There you go.
How much are you going to sell a liter of tequila for?
There you go. There's the dilemma.
Well, that is true, and especially if you're talking only about selling California agave spirit or
That's right.
one specific type. And so another thing, or like Henry's at Ventura Spirit, so they already had invested into a distillery. They make multiple other products and product lines. They make products for other people. And then, I don't know, Henry, if you want to talk a little bit about sort of the specialized equipment that you had to get, or the ovens.
Sure. I guess I'll try to help you with this hostile audience member. Let's see. One quick observation. So we started building our distillery back in 2011 or 2012. We weren't building a new building. The reason why we located where we did is because it had the right zoning, heavy industrial. And which allows you to have a distillery by right without jumping through a bunch of hoops, and because it was 25 cents a square foot, which was in our budget. And so just throwing that out, because to basically say that there are a ton of variables here, and obviously if you are building a distillery on your farm, which is a fantastic thing to do, if you can make it work, there are going to be a lot of costs associated with that, like new construction and all of the hoops that you need to jump through. Or you could go to an industrial area down the road and find a find a basement space, and you're knocking out a ton of those initial costs, and it's a easier way to do it. It might not be what you want, but just saying that these numbers are heavily dependent on the particulars. Sorry, what was I meant to be talking?
Talking about ovens and autoclaves and that.
Yeah, so I mean, in our case, we started working with agave because a local grower called us up and said, "Hey, we got a bunch of agave to work with. Would you like to take it and try to do something with it?" This was back in 2017 or 2018. And we were excited by the prospect, but it wasn't something we'd been planning for, and we certainly didn't have agave-specific infrastructure in place or anything like that. And so, in our case, we literally cooked in our still, meaning we used our still as a steam oven, tossing some water in there, downsizing the piñas so that they were small enough to fit into the still, and cooking it in the still, as a steam vessel, pulling the agaves out, pounding them with a 4x4 to render them down to their constituent parts. And I'm not saying this is a good idea, but I'm just, I guess this would be one end of the extreme, in terms of, capital invested. Obviously, that's not a system, but and as far as so that was our first oven, I guess, to answer your question, and we've since iterated, and we're a little bit farther along now than we were, but there are certainly there are multiple ways to get started.
And the cheapest oven would be the pit, right? Doesn't cost too much for that.
The cheapest may be the pit, but in California you have a lot of fire restrictions, and you probably won't be able to have an open flame or open burning pit. So I'm not sure where they do allow that. So.
Henry, what are you using currently? For the agave?
We have basically a retrofitted open top. It was a red wine fermenter. It's about 600 gallons and holds about 3,000 pounds of agave. It's a steam vessel at atmospheric pressure.
So, Brandon, do you want to keep going? Talk about some equipment, or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Henry's method is kind of they're pioneering, kind of trying to get things going in California, and there are ways that you can do it that are more economical than others. That's for sure. What we're looking at is bringing in equipment from Mexico or producing equipment in United States or Canada that is similar to what they use in the tequila industry. So autoclaves, brick ovens, actual agave shredders, actual agave molinos, and even tajonas. That's the type of equipment that I'm speaking about when I speak about these numbers. But then again, Henry's right, there's a lot of used equipment on the market, and could you put something together that may work for you? Yeah, you could, right? So just to give you a few numbers here, if you're looking at an autoclave, trying to add that to your distillery, you're looking somewhere in the range of $15,000 to $30,000. That doesn't include the boiler.
That's for 1 ton?
That's somewhere in like the 1 ton to 5 ton size range. I'm only speaking to the 1 ton to 5 ton. Obviously, we do have customers in California that are going up to like the 50 ton range, but those are kind of far and few between. A shredder for agave is much different than a wood chipper. What you want is you want to tear the fibers. You don't want to chop them up. Chopping up the fibers is going to give you a lot of off flavors, and so in Mexico they've actually developed a certain type of shredder that has these long blades, and it kind of pulls it like pulled pork more.
Do you know why that is, just out of curiosity? Shredding versus chopping?
Right.
Change flavor?
So breaking the fibers actually releases flavors that you don't really want. Yeah, and it'll produce more methanol. But it's also a flavor thing. It's not going to taste as good. So the shredder itself, you're looking at $30,000 to $50,000 for a proper agave shredder. Looking at a milling train, so you've all seen the roller mills that they have in Mexico. Usually they're in a train of 4 to 5 mills. When we speak of getting efficiencies of 8 kilograms to a liter of tequila, we're talking about using a milling line. We're not talking about soaking it in a tub and letting it drain or any of those types of methods. Really, if you want to squeeze out the amount of sugars that is going to be necessary to make things economical, you spent 7 years growing a peanut, you have to get that sugar out of it. You don't want to be wasting it, leaving it on the table.
And so, Henry, you're using a screw press for that, or some sort of, and are your efficiencies anywhere around that range, or a little lower, or?
No, we're actually not putting any traction on our agave at all. We're cooking, we're milling, and then we're using hot water extraction.
Got it.
And as far as efficiency, I don't know, Andrew. Our efficiency is excellent, according to Andrew. But no, I will say at this point for us, efficiency is certainly secondary to
Flavor.
To quality and flavor.
Yeah.
Agave is expensive relatively as a sugar source, and especially at this point in the development of California agave spirits, far and away the most important thing is, hey, let's make something that tastes good.
And that is the push and pull of the multinational versus the craft distiller, right? We're talking about the diffuser. The diffuser was born out of efficiency, not out of a flavor enhancement. And if you push too far in efficiency, it can affect those flavor decisions and the final product, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think somewhere in between what Henry's talking about and the molinos that they use in Mexico would be something on the lines of a small Tahona. A small Tahona, you're going to be getting maybe about 15 kilograms per liter of tequila. So there's a trade-off there, but also a lot of people like the flavor that you get from a Tahona as opposed to a molino style.
I had a question about the autoclave and about the roller mill lines.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've seen photos of plants in Mexico, and like one in particular has these awesome huge bronze gears that look pretty at their turning, but based on my limited experience in manufacturing in the US, you couldn't let a person anywhere near this thing while it's operating. And similarly, when somebody commissions an autoclave, what's required on the regulatory compliance and building and safety side of things to actually commission this equipment? Is that a big burden?
Very good question. Yes, it is much different in Mexico. Building a distillery in California, you have to abide by the regulatory requirements. OSHA's going to have their butts in there looking at every little piece of these spinning machines. And the way that they get around that in Mexico is they build guards around everything. Not every distillery does, but in California, you sure will need to have guards around anything that's moving. As far as the autoclaves go, so if you're operating an autoclave above 15 psi in California, you're going to have it built to ASME standards, which means that you're most likely going to have it built in the United States. And an engineer actually goes through the calculations and designs it. Now, the way that you will get around doing that is to just operate under 15 psi, and then it won't have to be built to ASME standards and have such a strict.
And what's the industry norm as far as operating pressure for autoclaves? And is, maybe Grover?
Yeah.
Is lower pressure better in flavor, or is higher pressure better? And then also, what's the trade-off in cycle time?
Yeah, Grover, do you have any input on that?
Man, it's super complex. Everything, the answer to all of this stuff is it depends. Yeah, the lower pressure is generally better. And I mean, if you want aroma and flavor, you want, this is going to sound really stupid, you want inconsistent temperature. You want like up and down. Brick ovens are really good for that because they leak. You have to consistently put steam in there. And inside that oven, the temperature is going up and down just a little bit. That promotes caramelization. Caramelization is really bad for alcohol yield, but it's really great for aroma and flavor. So you kind of have to make a distinction on that. Autoclaves, they kind of get locked into a certain pressure and a certain temperature for the duration. Less caramelization happens in those. And lower pressure means longer time. Generally, that's better, but it's going to be costly because you have to spend more on steam.
Just a clarification, so that there is a product, syrup, that is shipped and other people use it to make agave.
Many.
It's uncertain how long it's stable for. Is that
Okay,
the summary?
so there's an industry that has existed for quite some time that will sell agave syrup to distilleries, right? That syrup is made in an industrialized process, so that it's not cooked in a steam oven. It's cooked. It's not cooked really. It's more of a chemical process to convert the syrup, the raw agave syrup, into something that's sugary. Typically, that process then adds 4 other steps to it to filter out every single thing other than the fructose, because the goal of that product is to use as a sweetener, a neutral sweetener that doesn't impact any other aromas and flavors.
Tastes earthy.
When you try to use that to make a distilled agave spirit here in the States, you have to add all kinds of nutrients to that in order for the yeast to be somewhat productive. Because if it's a very hostile environment for the yeast if it's just only fructose, right? So now you have to add all this stuff to it, and then you have to hope and pray that it's going to work, that the blend is right, that everything's going to work out. So I did side-by-side trials of that syrup versus Rispetto right next to it. Rispetto is opposite, right? Cooked in a brick oven, crushed with a tone and a roller mill, and then just the water taken out. That's it, no filter. And all the vitamins and minerals are still in there. And so I just added water and put yeast in there, and it was absolutely night and day. It was like I'm in a tequila distillery, and the fermentation is going crazy. So there's 2 types. So hopefully everybody here gets a sample of this before they leave. You can taste it, but it's also great for distilling, and we can sell it by the tote. So
How long is that stable? With respect to how long is that stable?
Forever.
It's good for 3 years. However, we're very super careful about it, about what we state on the bottle. So we're putting 1 year just because we want to be. But I have a bottle that's 3 years old. That's perfectly fine. We opted to not put any extenders in there or preservatives because that can get in the way of the yeast doing what it wants to do. And so, therefore, that kind of is a shorter window. But we consider this to be a natural product. And the goal here is not for us to make a ton of it and then be sitting in a warehouse. It's a natural product. So.
Basically, in Mexico, they're doing the heavy lifting for you, and you're just kind of doing the final step.
Yeah.
The mixing, the bottling, the marketing.
Yeah, the fermentation. So in Mexico, what they would be doing is they'd be growing it, and they would be harvesting it, cooking it, and then extracting. And then okay, time out, now it goes to the States. Once it gets there, you do the fermentation here, using your yeast and your environment, wherever you happen to be, and your distillation process. So, and if you want, what we're working towards is that if somebody says, well, I want agaves from here, and I want the hema cut to be just a certain way, and I want it to be cooked in a certain way, and I want a certain percentage of it to be Dona or 100% Dona, we can custom make that then put it in a tote. A tote is massive. It's the size of a cube, it's a pallet, size of a pallet.
250 gallon.
They weigh by ton. It's very confusing for me because it's sugar, so it's all by weight, you know? It's 1,350 kilos of agave sugar in each tote.
It's not a viable way to if you got a crop in the ground, though, it's not a viable way to save your crop if you don't distill it. You have to process
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's a way to freeze time.
that. Yeah, but it's not like, oh, I can save $1 million. That's not the answer.
Probably more expensive.
Yeah. There is one rum distillery that does that with cane juice as well. So yeah, I mean, there's 600 at least 600 distilleries making rum in the United States. There's a single farm that sort of does that process in rum. So yeah, not very common.
I mean, another thing that's shelf stable is spirits.
Very.
You know, so that, you know,
Yeah.
that's another option.
I think, like Henry said, I think the best option you have is to distill it as quickly as humanly possible and get it into a form that's.
Come on, Henry, that'll only last 1,000 years.
So going back to the cost perspective, that's what we're wanting to discuss in this talk. The equipment is a large cost. Obviously, getting these specialized pieces of equipment, it's you're going to be running in the hundreds of thousands, if not, $1 million for equipment to do this. Yes.
I have a question that's completely off, but as a grower, and I know in Mexico, for example, we see that many master mezcaleros do bottles for different, same mezcalero has 5 different labels, right? They make for different people. Would the distillers ever be open to do that with growers and it still show us distilled by this brand that put the name of, for example, Rancho del Sol in our bottle? Is that something that is at all possible in this industry? And
Would it be
something-
using your own piñas?
Oh, using our piñas?
Yeah. Okay. So that'd be like
Using your
contract
distillery, but
distilling.
It's our label, so you give us a black label. We support your brand as the distiller, but it's not even at all possible. Because for us, I know we're growers, but we're into it with one of the distils, we don't have the land or whatever. We will collaborate with someone, and what does that mean, and what does that take to do that?
Sorry, we keep cutting you off here.
No,
Your
keep going.
questions.
It's good.
But yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. It's very possible, and it kind of depends on what your particular goals would be. But yeah, it's something that's done all the time. And you would need likely you would need to find somebody to take care of the back of the house admin side that would allow you to legally own spirits and sell them, or you could get the right license type yourself. But yeah, there's no fundamental obstacle to doing something like that.
Can you talk a little bit about TTB taxes and all that kind of stuff at different levels? Because of in that kind of situation, are they taking advantage of your tax discount for being small? And then does that erode yours?
No. Well, yes. So what Grover's talking about is that for actually at the federal level, up to 100,000 proof gallons, there's a really significant tax break. This is actually shared across all companies, big and small. For big companies, it's just a blip, so they're paying much higher. But we're talking about something like over $13 per proof gallon, all the way down to $2.70 per proof gallon. And so yes, if you are a small distiller who doesn't already produce over that 100,000 gallon mark, and somebody is doing contract, somebody's using you for contract production, then likely you will be passing through that tax benefit to them. Until you get too big, and then you need to figure out how you're going to be allocating that. Yeah.
What kind of licenses do you get to gas, $2 or something like that with you guys?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
What kind of
what licenses would a grower need to do that kind of work with you guys?
So probably the most useful license to have if you are working with somebody to do private label contract production for you would be a wholesaler license, which in California would be a Type 18. It allows you to buy products directly from the distiller, take ownership of it, and sell it to another distributor or directly to retail.
So that would allow for the B2B type, B2C type of direct-to-consumer in California?
You would not be able to sell direct-to-consumer as a distributor.
So to do a direct-to-consumer, would that be something that we should partner with you guys as well? Like keep your brand there?
A rectifier's license. A rectifier allows you to produce spirits. It's a production license, but not to distill them. So you're able to buy bulk spirits, for example, mix them, create whatever kind of product you want, a canned cocktail or any kind of bottled product, and sell it both to the trade or actually, no, you can't. It doesn't pay. So yeah, sorry. You can sell it direct to the trade, but you still can't do DTC. So yes, to do DTC, the only option I'm aware of would be to have your Type 74, which is your California Craft Distillers license, which for most stuff requires you to sell through a distributor, but has a limited exception for direct-to-consumer sales.
So, Henry, could the growers have a Type 74, have you pay you to process their piñas, produce spirits, and then transfer it in bond back to them and have them bottle it and sell it?
If you're a Type 74, that means you have a distillery.
Well, you could own a still, you could own a 2-gallon still, but utilize someone like you as the production so they don't have to spend $3 million in equipment and spend all the money to have that equipment that isn't as optimized.
Can you transfer a finished product and bond?
I think the bigger problem would be the manufacturer stipulation where if you have to actually pass it through your still to take advantage of the types of work.
Yeah, the agency is tracking down. The restaurants did this a lot. They would buy a small still and call themselves a distillery in order to get some of the privileges of Type 74. And the agency is really cracking down on that. So now you actually do need to distill more final products.
So done a bad job answering your question. So I suppose you could partner with somebody like us that has some kind of DTC privileges. Or one more alternative is there are plenty of retailers or companies that technically are retailers that will partner with producers to basically make it appear that the consumer is buying directly from a distillery when in fact the bottles are coming through a retailer. And so, probably the margins don't look great in that sort of setup typically, but there are a couple different ways to do it.
It would also probably not allow for you to have like an in-person farm stand tasting where you sell those bottles. It would just be online, website sales with fulfillment.
Right.
We at Madrid, we do direct to consumer. We do it the way that you just described, really going through an end retailer. Depending on who you're actually utilising, that's the margin, and that's all the marketing, it's all the margin. So it makes it very expensive.
Right. It's really marketing.
If you find a distributor and a distribution network that's got a low margin base, you can get away with it. But Park Street in the US is a great, more of an importer, but they have much lower sort of margins and some of the bigger distributors.
It looks like you can make it look like you're selling directly, but effectively you're not, and somebody's taking the margin for doing it.
Right.
So
Well, we are getting
optics, but it's not economic.
We are getting close to time here. Maybe to wrap up Brandon's conversations about costs, one of the interesting things when we were talking about this is that the building can actually cost as much as the equipment inside of it. To put up a building, to run the tubing, you know, because you have to go from a boiler to condensers and all the costs of electrical sprinklers. Sprinklers are incredibly expensive, and if you're on a farm, you have to build some sort of tank to be able to put out the fire for X number of hours, which, you know, it's, so yeah, just even the building can be, the equipment is very expensive. The whole process can be, yeah, very capital intensive.
I just had one very black and white question. I know you guys all know the answer. What size of how much agave do you need?
It depends.
In order to make a distillery profit. You already told us one example that didn't work. How big does it have to be, or how many of us have to get together supplying agave per year in order to make it work?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I don't exactly know how to answer that. You know, we've run through a number of different scenarios with a number of farms, and it all comes down to the ROI, right? What is your return on investment? How many years is it going to take for you to pay off what you invested into the distillery? And it changes for every single one. Somewhere probably around maybe 45 to 50 tons per day is something that would possibly be a viable farm distillery.
We were just given the sign to wrap it up.